Hello and welcome to another word from the street and me, David Ford from Expert Link. And I don't know why I'm sounding so enthusiastic today, actually, because I'm going to entitle this one "State of the Nation," and it should be "State of the fucking Nation," man. It's just absolutely unbelievable. And I was going to do this video, this vlog, last night when I was out. So what happened last night is I went and I got invited to go and do some outreach with some volunteers with lived experience who do an outreach around London. Went up into Charing Cross in London, and I came back last night full of gratitude. Although I had an horrendous, I couldn't sleep last night after what I'd seen, but full of gratitude and humility. For a number of reasons. First of all, we got up into Charing Cross, and the amount of people, once you get outside Charing Cross and the block opposite and you walk around it, the amount of people that we saw who were either sleeping rough, obviously destitution. You know, there was people in chaos, caught up in that chaos, the addictions and the trauma and all that sort of stuff, and so other people as well who weren't necessarily rough sleeping. I'm not judging, but they didn't look as if they were rough sleeping to me. So around Charing Cross at about 7:30, there's quite a few opportunities to get food from some of the food bank guys, the hot meals and that type of stuff, and so I went and spent some the evening around that to quite late. I was really, it's gratitude. I had the opportunity to meet people who were stuck in that chaos. I had the opportunity to meet people who were new onto the streets, and we managed to offer up a little bit of support and do things for them. I managed to speak to, I got to speak to some some incredibly wonderful people who spent a long time on the streets, an awful long time on the streets. But it rocked me to my core. All of that rocked me to the core, because we had that Everybody In campaign, and we got everybody in, and yet there were so many people out there on the streets rough sleeping. And when I looked at the food banks, or however you want to call them, there's a wonderful, I should have remembered their name and given them a plug here, a Sikh group that are offering food. There are other groups offering food, volunteers from the faith-based community coming out there and feeding those, or offering food to those in need. First, I was struck by, humbled by the fact that there's so many people out trying to support and offer food and what they can to help people who are caught up in rough sleeping and destitution, all that type of stuff, and really trying to help. And that was, as I said, humbling. But what also really struck me was the amount of people that were perhaps turning up at the for food who weren't necessarily looking as if they were rough sleeping, and but obviously in need. Wow, man. I mean, I saw in the short space around the food bit that I spent, which was probably an hour, probably well over 150 people. It got to have been over 150 people. There's a lot of people milling around, and we just walked around a block, and it's just unbelievable, just absolutely unflipping believable, And afterwards, I went and was speaking to some people. I spoke to some people before, and afterwards we tried to support one guy, and they managed to help him and get him some sort of support, immediate support, to get him into where he wanted to be safe. There was some other wonderful things happened, but I had some amazing conversations, and I'm not going to mention any names, but an amazing conversation with somebody who's probably spent more, well over 20 years on the streets, a female, and another guy, who, these were really articulate, well-spoken people, absolutely not suffering from any sort of addiction. And certainly didn't come across as suffering from any sort of mental health, and really articulate, but they're stuck where they are, and I don't know. When I say the state of the nation, I just think it is so sad that we're having people who, and there was a guy there at the food bank who looked at, there was a couple of people actually, but one guy in particular struck me as he's come from the office to get food. Is that desperate? Surely not in the UK this day and age, 2020. Surely not. But that was happening. That was happening. There was other people there who I thought, oh, blimey, you know, this just is not right. Now I was seeing the guys on the streets again, or the rough sleeping. This isn't right. We had the Everyone In campaign. Why are they here? Speaking to people about who've been out there long term, but it gone in at some point on the Everybody In, but actually they felt safer and better out on the streets, you know. And these are females, by the way, some of them. Oi, 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 oi. Do you know, whatever it is that we are where we are, for me, one of the obvious things is the disconnect between the policy making and decision making and reality. There's that huge disconnect, and I think that, you know, those who make the policies, and I know that I appreciate that some of them have got to be tough, you know, I wouldn't necessarily want to be making all of the policies that we have to be making at the moment, but surely if there was that connection between the policymaker and reality, what's happening out on the streets, we'd come up with something, surely, that wouldn't mean that people are having to queue up at food banks and soup kitchens and soup runs and wouldn't be left or end up back on the streets when we had everybody in at one point, or pretty much. The answer surely for me has to be, in that linking, is about co-production. It's about the policymakers listening to those with lived experience who are experiencing what's happening to them right now. Surely it has to be that for me. And you know what? That's driving. I didn't sleep last night. I had a horrendous night's sleep thinking about some of the stuff that I saw out there. And by the way, a quick plug, I'm really, really grateful for the group that took me out there, in particular Claire, who showed me around and introduced me to some of the guys on the streets. But the thing, although I didn't sleep, the thing that drives me forward, and I hope drives you forward too, that passion to see injustices turned around. And actually we're going to do that by bringing the voices of those with lived experience to meet with the policy makers. So in the middle somewhere is that place where we can come up with the right stuff, the right policies, make the right decisions, have the right projects, have the right whatever it is to end the suffering that we see around the UK right now. We know that, or we're expecting that numbers for rough sleeping and people caught up needing food in destitution, so needing food banks and soup runs and stuff, is going to grow. We're expecting to have one of the worst recessions, you know, since whenever. We're concerned about, we're bringing up the biggest debt that's out of World War II. So we're expecting things to happen. Surely, you know, we need to start bringing people together and co-producing the policies, co-producing the decisions and the projects to get us out, to stop the suffering, to get us out of the mess that we're in. Was that a rant? It felt like one. That's the passion from last night, from what I saw, and the pain and the suffering that I felt out there. Guys, if you're doing co-production, my heart's with you, my support's with you. Get in touch, you know. Let us know. I'd love to hear what you're up to. But don't give up, because it's the people out there who are suffering right now that need us to keep going. We can't afford to stop. We have to keep going, you know. Their lives are at stake here, ultimately, you know, so we have to keep going. So keep your chin up. I know it's hard at times, I find it tough at times, but we've got to keep going. And if you want to go and a reality check for yourself, if you're not out there doing stuff on the streets right now, and you're a little bit disconnected, I haven't done any outreach up in London for a while now, for probably over a year, and it was just unbelievable. It's a real connection and helps you focus your mind and hold on to your purpose and what you're trying to do. So get out and do it. Listen, if you like that video, really support a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, just please subscribe to us. It'll help us get this conversation going and wider and get more people involved and spread the word. I know the movement, the co-production movement is growing. There's some great stuff happening around the country, but the more of us that we've involved in the conversations, the louder they'll be, the more energy it will create, and the more people will get involved. And do you know what? We might just get those policymakers and the lived experience, that real thing, together to co-create the world that we want to see. That's enough for me for today. Guys, I love you all. Take care. Until next time, stay safe.